to bear with me for a minute. I've talked to you, I've mentioned it several times. The UFC has settled an antitrust monopoly case out of court. They settled for $375 million. 1,200 different fighters are eligible to receive effectively back pay from the UFC.
I was about to kill you.
Rob Macy is the attorney whose law firm pushed this case over the course of about 12 years, pushed this case through and got fighters paid. He's going to join me on the show at 12:30.
Oh, I have a Spence Checketts.
And then at 1 o'clock, we'll talk some hockey with Robin Leonio, Utah Hockey Club insider, host of the Utah Hockey Club podcast. This has been an incredible weekend for every sport. Even football had some interesting things developing over the course of your President's Day weekend. Hockey, I think, though, came out on top. The Four Nations Challenge, Team USA versus Team Canada, 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. Montreal crowds booing the national anthem and everyone getting real heated about it. It was what international sport, international hockey especially, is supposed to be. Now there's a little rumor, a little innuendo out there that Clayton Keller might actually be tapped as an injury replacement for the upcoming Four Nations championship hockey game on Thursday, as Team USA will take to the ice to pull down their first Four Nations crown, we hope, knock on wood. If Clayton Keller could be a part of that, it would be incredible. But wildly physical, intense hockey game, USA versus Canada, and even like USA versus Finland, while there was a lopsided affair, everyone was playing hard. Sweden versus Canada, everyone was playing hard, right? The NHL has figured out the All-Star game and the All-Star break in a way that is beyond hope for the NFL, beyond hope for the NBA. I think probably outside, maybe not. Maybe baseball could pull it off. But everyone else is just like, oh, man, hockey. And I think that part of that is hockey players are just different. I think hockey players are closer to what we think of when we thought of like collegiate athletes from 15 years ago. I think that there's more love of the game in hockey than in just about anything else in pro sports. When you get to that level, right, when you get to a point where whatever your job is, it becomes a job. Even this is a job, all right? I get to sit here in front of a microphone for 3 hours a day. I get to pretend I know what I'm talking about. It's all about sports. I screw up. Nobody dies. I do a good job. It doesn't really matter either, right? But even this is a job. As much of a dream job as it is, even this becomes a job for people. That's true in hockey. That's true in baseball. That's true in basketball. That's true in football. Your dream when you were a kid is somebody else's job that they're like, I don't want to roll out of bed and my sore body has to get to the training table and I got to get that massage and I get all the stuff that you're like, what? That sounds awesome. That's a job for somebody else, okay? But I think hockey players love their job more than most pro athletes. I think we're seeing that in the season. We're getting more familiar with it now that Utah is firmly entrenched in hockey culture for the first time, and I think you're seeing that over the Four Nations break. We'll get into all that on the show today. I want to start with Utah men's basketball. Greg Smith is a good coach. This team is not as talented as some of the competition that they're going to play. This team is not as talented as the Kansas Jayhawks ranked squad that came in and you had to figure out a way to get your first real important win of the season, your first, like, plant the flag, I promise you this is what we're capable of type win of the season. And you did it when Gabe Madsen was chasing the all-time three-pointers made record at the University of Utah in a crucial juncture in this game. He hits that step-back three-pointer, put them up, I think, 7 again. They were up 4, and I think that three-pointer, the triple goes in, puts them up 7. Kansas trying to make that late push, staved off partially by the timely shot-making of Gabe Madsen, by just a Utah men's basketball team that when we talk about consistency, when we talk about the things you can't let an opposing team do, you can't give up offensive rebounds to the other team. You can't let somebody beat you on the hustle plays. You can't commit stupid fouls that lead to and ones or send people to the line when they don't deserve it. It's fine if somebody gets free throws against you, if they earn the damn free throws. So many times this year, there's just been these head-scratching moments for Utah men's basketball. And finally, you had your first good weekend of the year. Right? Win over Kansas. Win over a Kansas State team that heading into last weekend was one of the hotter teams in the conference. BYU splashed some cold water on that. Utah finished it off. And your Utes, Kansas and Kansas State victories.
None of the fact it was Kansas' first time visiting the Huntsman Center as well.
And look, the atmosphere was I don't situation is at the Huntsman Center. I don't know why when you try to buy tickets, it looks like there's not a lot of tickets available, and then the seats aren't full. I don't know if they're like offloading a bunch of giveaways or something, but we got to do better on attendance at both Utah men's and women's basketball games. Red Rocks are drawing still. We know that they always will. The attendance at football games is healthy. We got to do a better job for these teams, man. I know that when your team is hovering around 500 and you get spoiled on success, you want your Utes to look better. Well, they're going to look better if you show up and you support these programs. Big weekend for Utah men's basketball because there is, in every team, there is a dynamic where you're wondering when it's going to come together. Even really good teams, even elite teams in this conference and in the country, you're wondering when they're going to play their very best basketball. Houston and Kansas and everyone else is wondering, oh, man, what it's going to look like when we put our full, complete game together. We waited until the third weekend in February to get the answer on that for Utah men's basketball. This is what it looks like when it finally comes together. Well, actually, I don't even know if I can say that confidently because when you look at the numbers in these games, when you look at the percentages that Utah shot, you relied maybe too heavily on your hustle plays, on your rebounding, on some timely defense. Because if I would have told you that the number 17 Kansas Jayhawks were coming in to the Huntsman Center and Utah was going to shoot 36% from the field, 32% from three, and 60% from the stripe, but still get a win, you'd have laughed in my face. Especially if I said Kansas will shoot better percentages in all three of those categories. So how do you win a game like that? How do you win a game like that? Extra possessions because of your hustle, because of your rebounding, because of some timely defense, 7 steals in the game, forcing turnovers. That's how you give yourself extra possessions. And Utah men's basketball has been giving away too many extra possessions all season long. And finally against Kansas, it didn't matter. Somehow it didn't matter that you shot very, very poorly. That even as Gabe Madsen set the record for three-pointers, career three-pointers made at the University of Utah, it didn't matter that Mongolian Mike went 3 of 12 from the field. He shot 25%. The most consistent guy on your team. The guy who has given you, Mongolian Mike deserves credit, even though this was not his best game against Kansas, because most of the time you know exactly what you're going to get. He's the one guy on this team who hasn't really gone off for his, mega point production game. He's not been the guy who's given you 25 points or 29 points or 24 points. He hasn't been that guy. Mongolian Mike gets credit for me for being the dude that you know what you're going to get from him pretty much every game. You're going to get in the range of 26 to 30 minutes. You're going to get usually a better field goal percentage than this, but you're going to get a couple of rebounds. You're going to get a couple of assists. You're going to get a timely bucket where he's just like, oh, no one's going to pick me up defensively. This game is on the line. We got like a 4-point lead right now, and Kansas is so worried about what everyone else is doing that they're going to let me go coast to coast. I'm going to take an inbound pass, and I'm just going to kind of like dribble my way all the way to the basket. You're going to give me an easy bucket. He just recognizes his role. So Mongolian Mike gets credit for that. This was not his best game, but he's consistent. In a team where you don't know what you're going to get on any given night from everyone else, Ezra Asar is two different players. He is Dr. Jekyll. He is Mr. Hyde. You saw both of those individuals this weekend. Now, against Kansas, he was integral in the rebounding effort. Jake Wallin pulled down 12 boards. These guys gave you extra possessions. It was awesome. And then against Kansas State, Ezra decided, okay, now it's my game to go off again. Now tonight, on a Monday night, on a President's Day, now I'm going to go off, and I'm going to give you the production we need because Gabe already did his like record-setting thing. So now it's my turn. Instead of 12 points in this game, I'm going to give you 21. 50% from the field, 7 for 7 from the stripe. I mean, one game you shoot 60% from the free throw line. The next game you shoot 76%. Oh, and by the way, against Kansas State, 15.8%. So I'll round up. 16% three-point shooting from this Utah men's basketball team, and they still found a way to win. Again, they scored 74 points, 74-67 against Kansas, 74-69 against Kansas State. It doesn't have to be pretty. This weekend was so necessary for Craig Smith, this coaching staff, and this team.
No, I 100% agree with you.
You're still not going to make the tournament, most likely. But you're building a little confidence down the stretch, and you've now proven to yourself, when even I'm guilty of it, when everyone talking about this team is like, gosh, if they could just all play together, if they could put it together, if they could make those hustle plays, if the effort would be there, if the boneheaded mistakes were eliminated, what could this team be? And when you have to answer that question, or when you have to ask that question is a better way to put it, when you have to ask that question night in and night out, it becomes a fatigued process. It becomes obnoxious, even for the players. And they're sitting there going, man, what will it look like? Why can't we put it together? Why don't we know who's going to go off tonight and who's going to have their bad game tonight? Why isn't there more consistency? And then you get a couple of games, and I'm not trying to tell you that this is a national championship team or anything like that, but the conversation around this team got to a level where it was starting to be uncomfortable, where players, as much as they try to insulate themselves and they remove themselves from the social media during the season, where it was becoming a situation where folks were getting restless at the Huntsman Center, where there's too many people asking me the question, has Craig Smith done enough to keep his job? Is Craig Smith the right guy to do that? Craig Smith is a great coach who has won and cut down the nets at every stop he has had. And so that's my stance on Craig Smith. And then, of course, the natural question that people bring next is, well, what's wrong? Why not here? Why hasn't it happened yet? And then because we are so obsessed with the money involved in college sports right now, and for good reason, we're going to get to later in the show today, we're going to get to the discussion happening right now around an expanded college football playoff. Again, after the first expanded college football playoff, we're now ready to talk about expanding it again, and a revelation in these memorandums by the NCAA about where the decision-making is going to be done with the college football playoff tells us everything we need to know about how much money matters in college sports. And Utah basketball is not immune to it. So when I keep telling people, Craig Smith knows what he's doing, charismatic guy, great at identifying talent, great at developing talent, they say, okay, well then what's happening? What's going wrong? Resources become the next, like the immediate point B in the discussion. Okay, well that, if the players are not the problem, the coach is not the problem, where the if the coach is not the problem and the program's commitment is not the problem, What about the resources? What about the NIL? What about all that? And this team has not been able to 100% insulate itself from those discussions. As strong as the effort has been, as valiant of an effort as they put up in just like staying the course, keeping the head down, putting in the work, college athletes are on the internet. College coaches have Twitter accounts, or their spouses do. They tune in to ESPN 700 radio every now and again and listen to the Pulse. And a lot of the conversation has been like, man, is Utah men's basketball cooked and we're a football school now and you just can't expect to be good on both fronts? And I'm partially responsible for that questioning happening. But this weekend doesn't put the fires all the way out, but shows you what's possible even with this group of guys. Not because they just get hot and shoot perfectly, but when they start playing basketball the right way and the hustle is there, the effort is there, the atmosphere is there, the crowd gives them the support, and it looks like Utah basketball. Just the glimmer, just the glance, just to turn back the clock a little bit and see what Utah basketball was. A fun weekend, even if that's all it ends up being, a fun weekend with wins over the Kansas schools who no longer enjoy the idea of going to Salt Lake City. It was cold, it was snowy, there was flight problems, and the altitude is not their friend. Both of these teams came to the Huntsman Center, got sent back to the Sunflower State, licking their wounds.
Kansas got BYU tonight as well.
Oh, that's right. Kansas still has business to take care of. So, congratulations to all of you who took the time and made it up there to the Huntsman Center, or at least tuned in and watched some fun Utah basketball. Maddening at times to see the lid over the bucket, but a strong effort. And I say a strong effort because it very much was effort that made this happen for the University of Utah. Against Kansas State, they out-rebounded Kansas State 51-28.
Wow.
51-28. 21 offensive rebounds in the game for Utah against Kansas State. That is not a talent question. That is a coaching and effort question. 74 points in each of these games, 2 victories, a little friendly momentum, a little feel-good for the Utes, who also out-rebounded Kansas by double digits. So if you're not going to make every shot, you better rebound. And what did we see last week from the Utes that was frustrating to everyone, that we talked about in the Cincinnati fall apart at the end? After battling back against the Bearcats on the road, we had Craig Smith on, and what did we talk about? You tie it up at 72-72, and what allows Cincinnati to pull away in that game? Extra possessions.
Rebounds, everything.
Long offensive rebounds, a turnover from Utah, extra possessions for Cincinnati, and all they do is turn them into points. And Utah hits the dry spell, lose 85-75 against a Cincinnati team that is not good.
Yeah, and they played earlier in the year as well, and Utah was able to defeat Cincinnati at home.
So it was a fun weekend. It was great, by the way, to see that juxtaposed against the NBA All-Star Weekend, which I'm kind of with Kevin Durant, even though he's problematic. Kevin Durant is like, maybe we should just stop doing this if everyone's going to complain about it. I don't want to be the one who's sitting and complaining about NBA All-Star Weekend. It was fun to see Salt Lake City get to host NBA All-Star Weekend. There's still value to the event from a fan engagement standpoint. The tweaking that they've proposed needs to be done. It needs to be done today. So you get this, you turn into college basketball, and sometimes the game is ugly, and you get these disgustingly long scoring droughts, and you get some just bad shots, horrible passing, sometimes the ball handling. You're just like, that is something I wouldn't see at a church ball game, right? College basketball is ugly, but we love it. It's like a bulldog puppy. They're cute because they're so ugly. They're not cute because they're cute. You look at like a full-grown bulldog, and you want to get down there on the ground and you want to like give him big kisses, not because he's actually a cute dog, but because they got the snaggletooth coming out of the bottom jaw. There's like that little bit of slobber, and they snort when they breathe. That's college basketball when you compare it to the NBA game. It's lovably ugly, right? Unfortunately, NBA basketball is becoming unlovably pretty. Yes, the skill level is incredibly high, but it's just not as lovable as it used to be. For the exact diametrically opposed reasons, we are all embracing hockey right now, and the entire country, not just Utah, who's new to the game, but the entire country is being reminded, like, oh my gosh, these guys care a lot, and they're willing to compete hard, even in a quote-unquote meaningless all-star, like whatever. They find meaning because they want to win. They love the sport. And in the NBA, we've gotten away from a point where we know that. It's unfair to pretend these players don't love the sport, okay? But there are plenty of examples available very readily to us that make it look like, you know what, the league might not love the competitive nature of the sport, the purity of the sport. The players might not love the grind and the grit and the competition on face value as much as we would like them to as observers. And we've allowed the business and money in all sports to take over to such a level that anything is excusable in the NBA, in the NFL, in Major League Baseball, especially in the NBA, though. Anything is excusable if it makes financial sense. And that's not how most of us get to operate. You know what? I'll do a better job on Friday if you let me skip work on Wednesday. So I'm going to skip work on Wednesday. It just doesn't resonate with an average fan. It doesn't make sense to the person who's got to show up and do the thing every day, even if they don't want to have somebody who's making 100 times their salary not have to work hard every day. And there are players, by the way, that you love to root for because you recognize that, like, oh, this matters to them the way that I want it to matter to them. And there's other guys that the best player in the league doesn't even like basketball, and he's public about it. Jokic is like, he just wants to get back to Serbia and play with his horses. Now, part of that's endearing, but the other half of it is just like, how many of these guys actually don't care?
Yeah.
How many of these guys are going to show up and they wish every weekend and every game was like the NBA All-Star game? And it's aggravated very drastically right now for fans here in Salt Lake City, because even though this team, the Utah Jazz, are made up of guys I think that mostly would be what you're looking for, would be the guys that care and compete hard and have the grit and the want to and all that stuff, right now their franchise doesn't even want them to display that every night.
Mm-mm.
You can do it against the Lakers, but don't do back-to-back nights against the Lakers and the Clippers. You can go out there and you could fight tooth and nail to try and get these wins, even on a bad shooting night. Even when you got to dive on the floor and you got to out-rebound somebody by double digits, you got to find a way, like Utah basketball found a way, even though it was ugly. Actually, we don't want you to do that tonight, though, because we're trying to tank our way into a good draft pick. The NBA is not in trouble. The NBA is not losing money. The NBA is not on its way out, but the NBA is aloof. The NBA, if hockey right now and college basketball and whatever else, if that's the ugly bulldog puppy that you love, if that's the mutt with the wiry hair that you just can't help but enjoy the little quirks, NBA basketball is like that meticulously groomed poodle of the highest breeding that doesn't even want you to pet it. That's how the NBA feels right now.
Yeah.
After the All-Star game, that everybody was like even Draymond Green was like, that thing sucked. you have the Greek Freak. You have Giannis being like, we need to change this. Make it USA versus the world so we care about this. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I saw that this morning. That's actually like the smartest idea I've ever heard.
It's an amazing idea.
It's an amazing idea.
It's a little bit of that Olympic World Cup flavor splashed into the middle of your NBA season every single year. You know why it's not going to work, Zach? You know why it's not going to happen?
Why is that?
Because NBA owners are not going to say, you know what? Let's outsource this. At least that version of the proposal, the off the cuff elite players saying, make this an international event. NBA owners are not going to be like, yeah, we're going to outsource our NBA All-Star Weekend to Paris every other year. We're going to send it to London every other year. We're gonna let Munich host our NBA All-Star Weekend. The owner, they're going to be like, I don't know if we want to do that, because then my arena has no shot of hosting it. My city doesn't get the $100 million or whatever.
Right. And
again, we do this. Anything that makes financial sense, we excuse. So maybe there's enough financial incentive that they would say, all right, we'll go overseas for the All-Star game. But right now, there's just this sort of disconnect, it feels like, with the NBA game and the fan base that is looking across the street and is seeing the players suiting up in an NHL midseason All-Star sort of break, literally fighting because they're so passionate about it. Like literally fighting one another and smashing everybody into the boards. And the NBA All-Star game is just, even the players themselves are saying this is not what we need it to be.
No, not at all. And I'm remembering before, like, this whole rule change and everything, like the Rising Stars game, it was USA versus the world, whatever. I don't remember the exact teams, but like, why not incorporate that into NBA All-Star Weekend, like what NHL is doing right now with 4 nations right now?
I mean, the players, several players, not all players, several players have said this would be the thing that fixes it. I saw a proposal also last night that maybe, because I think you get $125,000 if you win an All-Star game right now in the NBA.
I think so.
Players, All-Star caliber players, are all making tens of millions of dollars per year. $125,000 is not a meaningful sum to them. I saw a proposal that they could do a one-on-one tournament with the winner getting $1 million. First of all, I don't know how many of these guys are motivated by $1 million, so you probably want to bump that up to like 10 million.
Yeah.
And the bragging rights, just like the bragging rights of Canada versus USA in hockey, the bragging rights of 4 nations, the bragging rights of what I proposed with like a state of origin situation to fix football, the bragging rights is what you have to bring back into the NBA All-Star game. Instead of it just being like, hey, we're all All-Stars. Everyone's happy because we're all All-Stars here. I'm an All-Star. You're an All-Star. We're the best players in the world. Let's not actually compete against one another. We'd both rather be resting at home right now. Bragging rights, if you just straight up say, one-on-one, guys, here's the best 12 players in the NBA, the best 16 players in the NBA. They're going to play a tournament against one another. I don't care. Like, make it to 5. Half-court games of one-on-one, whatever. Do something.
Right. I agree for sure. And whether it's that or going back to the captains, which I didn't like the captains draft, honestly. It's not my favorite. It was always LeBron and Giannis and Steph and whoever, but figure something out. Get players excited to be in this moment.
All right, got to take a break. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us on the other side. He'll give us his thoughts on the NBA All-Star Weekend. Lots to get to on the show, which, of course, is brought to you by Les Schwab Tires today and every day. Tires, wheels, accessories, whatever it is you drive, Les Schwab has what you need. Stop by the local Les Schwab, and the professionals will get the job done right the very first time. Mac McClung, 3 years in a row, dunk contest winner. Is that enough to save NBA All-Star Weekend? We'll talk about it with Gordy. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Kyle Whittingham and Utah football. Utah men's men's and women's basketball. Marquee games in the NFL from week 1 to the Super Bowl. The biggest NBA games from the regular season to the finals. Top NHL games till they lift the Stanley Cup. Major League Baseball and the World Series. The biggest events in sports are exclusively on Utah's #1 sports talk. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Hey, it's Bill Riley, the play-by-play voice of the University of Utah here for my friends at Les Schwab Tires. That's right. The weather is changing. That means your vehicles and your tires are changing too. One thing that happens is the air pressure in your tires can go down as the temperature does. That's why you want to work with that great team at your locally owned and operated Les Schwab Tire Center. When you buy your tires at Les Schwab, you're getting more than just tires. You're getting America's best tire warranty and the service that goes along with it. You're also getting a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, no hassle, road hazard protection, and free maintenance for the life of your tires. Other places make you pay for that, but at Les Schwab, it's included with every set of tires. Because more warranty means less worry, and nobody stands by their tires like Les Schwab. Visit your local Les Schwab today or book your appointment online at leschwab.com. Again, tell them Bill Riley sent you in to Les Schwab and leschwab.com.
Oh, by the way, Ivan's no longer on the project. His wife got a new job, so they're moving across the country.
Robin's top researcher is deviating to a new market. This isn't standard.
And now we're short-staffed. Who's going to finish all these projects?
She needs a cluster of new data analysts, and there's no margin for error.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Put our matching platform to work so you can spend less time searching and more time connecting with talented candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Guys, did you know your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED? And right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. They've helped thousands of men since 2011 feel and perform better. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Schedule your free testosterone test, exam, and consultation today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Welcome, John, our new admin lead.
Thanks.
You've got your laptop, all your admin apps. Oh, and you'll be in charge of ordering food for the team. So here's your drawer full of menus.
Whoa.
You'll keep your receipts in this file folder. Whoops. Receipt confetti. Oh, and all the sticky notes have everyone's dietary preferences.
Have you tried EasyCater? Online ordering from great restaurants, tools to save time and stay on budget, digital receipts in one place.
We're going to need a better recycling bin.
EasyCater, the smarter, simpler way to order food for your workplace.
Hi, Gord.
Order now at easycater.com.
Hey, Gordy, it's Zach at 700. How are you?
Zach, I'm doing fine.
Did you
OC and I?
Yep, OC and you.
Great. Hi, North. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Gordy's good to go.
See taxpayer.com.
Miss today's episode of The Drive? Just open your favorite podcast app. Search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Hit subscribe and take us with you wherever you happen to go. Rate and review too. It helps out the show. You're listening to The Sean O'Connell Show. Brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Now back to OC on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
In athleticism in the half court.
Here's that defense, turning offense again. Stephon Castle.
Once again,
and saying hello to Sunday. Team Chris Mullen. Welcome to the big show on Sunday night.
Mike's up.
Keontae George with the game-winning three for Team C Friday night during All-Star Weekend, courtesy of TNT Sports. Gordy Chiesa, kind enough to join us here on the Sean O'Connell Show on the tail end of NBA All-Star Weekend. Gordy, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Sean. Now it's interesting. It's All-Star Weekend. There's so many interesting stories, but also mixed results. And the NBA has to figure out how to make it absolutely the game much more competitive. And that was good. Keontae George in Friday night where he stuck that jump shot. Ironically, that was the only basket of the game. So it was the right one to do for him, and that's good. That's good for his career arc. All right, so getting back to the All-Star game. The players really want this is they want to eventually, like the Olympics, what you and I spoke about in depth back in July, how there's a national pride about it country-wise. And so now it's come to the point where it has to be the world All-Stars of the NBA versus USA All-Stars.
I heard Giannis and others echo the sentiments that that's the right way to go about it. Is that a quick fix? Is that enough?
No, I think it's really going to be intriguing. In other words, so everyone likes the dunk contest. You know, Mac McClone, three-time winner in a row, some spectacular dunks. It was tremendous. Tyler Hero winning three-point shooting was good. Team Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley in the skill challenge. That was good. The All-Star game was confusing where there was like 40, it was like almost like a mini tournament. And I got confused about who's playing who now. And so it's the time. And, you know, what the Olympics were last year and its future, so it's a time to do it. Just saying, here's what would be the world All-Stars. You can debate this as far as other guys as they go forward. The team would be for the world All-Stars would be Nikola Jokic of Serbia, Luka Doncic of Slovenia, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Canada, Victor Wembanyama of France, Kyrie Irving of Australia, he was born in Australia, Giannis from Greece, Alperen Şengün from Turkey, Pascal Siakam from Cameroon, Joel Embiid from Cameroon, Rudy Gobert from France, Domantas Sabonis from Lithuania, and last but not least, Jamal Murray of Canada. That's 13 guys, and we can need even more or new guys that are going to come into the league. And so that would be an incredible team versus the American players that were born. So, for example, Durant, we all the names, LeBron James, Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Williams, Jason Tatum, James Harden, Dame Lillard, Jaylen Brown, Devin Booker, LaMelo Ball, Kate Cunningham, etc. I keep going on and on. So these are all guys that will be all-stars in the next generation.
So, okay, let's talk about the positives, because I've been pretty negative about the NBA All-Star Weekend, especially juxtaposed against what we saw from the NHL with the Four Nations and the elite competition that's happening there.
Spectacular.
And I know it's great, Gordy. It's apples to oranges. I know it's apples to oranges because the games are very different, the athletes are very different, the intensity across the board, the physicality is very different. So I want to stay positive about the NBA because they're not in trouble. This is still a multi-billion-dollar organization, and they're global and a continually expanding type of league. But when the star players start to admit and say, like, hey, we need to do something different, we need to change things, here's my suggestion for it. Adam Silver has been more apt or more willing, I think, than any other commissioner in any pro sport to listen to feedback from players, to respond to what they like, what they want, what they hope for, and maybe like put that into practice. And not only put it into practice, but to put it into practice quickly. So, I mean, are we talking about potentially an all-star game change next year?
Yes, and I recommend to do it next year and then keep it for 2 years, then reassess. So I would say if I was counseling the commissioner's office, I would do it for 2 straight years. U.S. All-Stars versus the World All-Stars, and then that format, see where you are after 2 years. It would be spectacular. And getting back, I didn't realize, Sean, that Sweden and Finland didn't like each other in hockey. I didn't realize that.
See, that's the other fun thing about.
I had no idea. I thought that's like love, peace, and happiness up in that part of the world.
Yeah, I always thought that like the Scandinavian countries were kind of like aligned on stuff, right? And apparently,
Norway.
Yeah, they're all mad at each other when it comes to hockey. But that's neighborly. That's fair.
And that's wonderful, and that's what you want to do. Again, it's an exhibition. However, you want to make them competitive. In 1988, in the All-Star game, when it was absolutely incredible competitive, Michael Jordan scored 44 points in the game. He shot 17 for 23 and really went after the Western Conference All-Stars. So that's the illustration. When Kobe Bryant played in the All-Star game, it was incredible. And most recently, Russell Westbrook was like a lightning rod in the All-Star games. So it does happen, but this generation, remember, all these players know each other from AAU basketball since literally they're 12 years old. Or with the European kids, they know each other from all the world championships, junior under 16, under 18 championships. So they really much more familiar, and obviously with social media platforms. So they're competitive people, but on this weekend, direct competition is not part of their MO, so it's got to change.
Gordy Chase is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about NBA All-Star Weekend and the changes that they need to make. What was your favorite part of the weekend? I mean, Mac McClung's dunks were awesome. The three-point contest is always a great show. Can those things stay the way they've been?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very much. Yeah, that was great. Mac McClung, let's not forget, he's in a two-way contract with Orlando Magic. So making all this money is absolutely important to him as far as with winning the three straight titles as far as the dunk contest. So that was the highlight of it. It's about the three-point shooting and the dunk contest. So fans love that. And again, this is fans want to see these people participate. Now, it'd be great next year in the dunk contest if some heavyweights come along, like say, let's go, some supreme dunkers would be, let's go, say, Donovan Mitchell again, someone like that, or let's go, Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley.
I saw John Morant got on Twitter and said, I might have to jump into this thing.
Yeah, very much. John Morant would be tremendous as far as him doing. Anthony Edwards also would be tremendous. And so that's what you want to do. You want to have the best in there. Ironically, LeBron James never was ever in the dunk contest, which just shows you how it's progressed without him.
If LeBron jumped into it at 41 years old, that would be incredible.
It would be incredible, really. It would be, and it would be spectacular. Imagine if he ever won it at age 41, and that's what the NBA, they want to have this. This is for the sponsors. This is for all the people that spend millions of dollars as far as with the NBA, with the league, as far as revenue stream. And that's why it's important to put a great show on. And for the listeners right now, next year it's going to be in LA. It's going to be the Clippers hosting it. So it's going to be again, a West Coast situation, and we're looking forward to it.
All right, Gordy. So let's talk about what's coming next for this Utah Jazz squad. NBA All-Star Weekend is fun. It's a little respite. Everyone except for Keontae George got a little time off, and now they got to get back to work. This next stretch of games for Utah, for this Jazz team, that, again, we know what the goals are this year. What are you looking for in the immediate future as they come back from the All-Star break?
Well, here's the arithmetic right now, is that they have 28 games left, 16 home and 12 away. And the Jazz right now are on their third game of the longest ever 9-game homestand, where they play the Thunder on Friday night and the Rockets on Saturday night. And a quick side note, both those games start at 7:30 at night versus usually traditional time of 7 o'clock. And so looking for is the continual improvement of the young guys, in particular Walker Kessler, who's been excellent work so far. And I call him a headache shot blocker because he's in the lane. He really changes people's minds when they penetrate. He's averaging 2.4 blocks per game, and he's rebounding like a demon, 11.8 rebounds, including 4.5 off the offensive glass, which leads the NBA. Isaiah Collier has been spectacular for the last 3 weeks. So it seems to me that the Jazz have found their future point guard. He's pass happy. He's a really good tempo changer. His shooting has gotten slightly better as he got more playing time. So I'm looking forward to him as far as his improvement and his steadiness. And then John Collins, let's not forget, he's having his own career year. So can John continue it? He's averaging 18.1 points per game, 52.4 field goal percentage, and 42.3 from threes, which is a career high. And so those are the three guys that I'm looking to see if they can continue improving, plus all the young guys. And the young guys, meaning what? Is that it's absolutely critical that a Cody Williams plays in the last stretch here, and he tries to pick it up as far as both offense and defense.
Who else are you watching closely in the NBA? Obviously, the Jazz are a top priority for you, but if you're somebody who's a Jazz fan who knows what the score is and knows what the rest of the season is probably going to look like, it's all about player development and planning for the future. Who's the team that you're most intrigued by for this year?
The Thunder. Because that's the model franchise as far as the Jazz are trying to replicate, where they build most times through the draft, with the exception being the MVP candidate, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We made that spectacular trade where they traded Paul George for entering his second season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So the Thunder, they're the ones that I'm watching. I love their team because they're by far the most balanced team, both offense and defense. They have star power. And in playoff basketball, that's what you need. You need somebody, or plural, get you a basket, a bucket in the fourth quarter when you have nothing in front of you. And that's what the Thunder have. So the question for the Thunder is, can these young guys really keep improving and go through all the adversity of the playoffs? Last year was the first bid in 4 years since 2020, and then they beat the Pelicans 4-0, and got punched in the face by the Mavericks 4-2. So that's what I'm intrigued by, to see what they can do in the playoffs. And quickly, in the Eastern Conference, is the Cavs, the upstart Cavaliers, led by former Jazz tremendous player Donovan Mitchell. Where can they hold off the Celtics? The Celtics are the favorite. The Cavs are up by the Cavs right now, or have a record of 44-10, while the Celtics are 29-16. So just say if the Cavs play the Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, the home court advantage would be the Cavaliers. So I'm intrigued by, can Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, can they really hang in there? With the also addition of DeAndre Hunter, can they really knock out the defending champion Celtics?
Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, my list today, before I forget, Sean, didn't Victor Wembanyama play really hard in those games in the All-Star weekend? He's one of the few guys I was saying to myself, Victor, I love you, dog, because you are playing so hard, and he did. So Wembanyama, I was thinking about him yesterday morning, and so this list is, he's on this list. This is the most career 10-plus block shot games, 10 blocks or more career-wise during the regular season. It's a very short list. Quickly, successful shot blockers is positioning, timing, fingertip technique, discipline, and body avoidance. So this list now is just 10 block shots career-wise a game. Did it twice in the NBA. They are Tree Rollins, Larry Nance, Bonet Benjamin, Ben Wallace, and now at age 21, Victor Wembanyama has had 2 games of 10-plus blocks. Number 9, Serge Ibaka did it 3 times. Number 8, Marcus Camby did it 4 times. Number 7, Hassan Whiteside did it 5 times. Tied for 5th, David Robinson and Sean Bradley, former BYU great, did it 10 times. 4th all-time, Hakeem Olajuwon did it 11 times. Number 3, Dikembe Mutombo did it 13 times. Number 2, Mark Eaton, and I saw many of these when I coached Mark. Mark blocked 10 shots or more 16 times in his career. And the number 1 shot blocker for most ever, 10-plus blocks per game career-wise, is Manute Bol. He did it 18 times of 10-plus blocks. Quickly, Jazz basketball, there's so few guys ever done it. Andrei Karolinko, the Jazz former Russian Comet, had 1 game where he blocked 10 shots or more. What about Walker Kessler? He's certainly his ability to do it. He's never had a game of 10 shots blocked in so far. His game high is 7, where he did it 5 times already. So Walker Kessler should be joining this list as far as 10-plus blocks per game.
Unbelievable.
Think about it, Sean. Mark Eaton, 16, 10 blocks per game. Wembanyama, age 21. I think Wembanyama will be the all-time greatest ever shot blocker. Both individually, percentage, career-wise, as far as total blocks, etc.
Gordy, love chatting with you, especially when we throw a little Victor Wembanyama. First time I've been disappointed in him because him and Chris Paul tried to play the rules in the skills challenge. They ended up getting the DQ. They tried to eliminate the shots.
Yeah, I know that. Well, he was influenced by Chris Paul. Chris Paul was trying to, be like the elder statesman of it. And guess what? Just follow the rules and be the best you can be. I agree, 100%.
Gordy, you're the man. Always appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Bye now.
Great stuff, as always, from Gordy Chiesa.
See you on Thursday.
Hot Lunch is coming next. The SEC and the Big Ten are ruling college football, not just competitively, like officially, in the language of it now. They get to decide the future of the playoff. We'll discuss this next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Local interest, national perspectives, and more.
Gavin Peterson going to join us at noon. Rob Macy, lawyer in charge of or spearheading the effort to get a huge settlement from the UFC for a bunch of former fighters. This is a big antitrust case. He's going to join us at 12:30 for about 10 minutes. But Gavin Peterson coming up at noon. Big game for the Utah women's basketball team tonight against Oklahoma State. All right. Little hot lunch situation going on. The SEC and the Big Ten, we know, are in charge of college football unofficially. Well, now they're officially in charge of college football. They get to decide, according to an NCAA memorandum, they get to decide the future of the college football playoff 2026 and beyond. Now, the proposal, the momentum, looks like what they want is a further expanded college football playoff, either 14 teams or 16 teams, that would guarantee 4 for each. 4 bids guaranteed to the Big Ten, 4 bids guaranteed to the SEC, 2 bids for the Big 12, 2 bids for the ACC, at-large bid, which, of course, is designed to give Notre Dame access to the college football playoff, and a highest-ranked conference champion like a Boise State kind of a situation. No automatic seeding where winning a conference champ, you wouldn't see Arizona State get a bye. You wouldn't see Boise State get a bye. Here's the thing. The correct response on this, I put a poll question out about how much people support the idea of further expanding a college football playoff, which we've only seen the expanded version of one time, exactly one time, and we're already ready to move on from it. You could tweak that model, that 12-team model, without the automatic first-round bye for being the highest-ranked conference champions. I think everyone would be pretty happy with this. When I say everyone, I mean everyone besides the SEC and the Big Ten, because they want more. They want more access. They want more money. That's what's happening here. The poll question, are you for expansion or against expansion? 55% of the votes coming in on against expansion. I said when the college football playoff expands, because it is going to expand if these two conferences are in charge, and it looks like they are indeed in charge. Would you rather have a 14-team playoff with bye games, with byes built in for the top 2, or do you want a 16-team playoff with no byes? 16-team playoff, no byes, is running away with it, almost 80% of the vote coming in there. I agree with that. 8 of those teams are going to be from the Big Ten and the SEC. Here's my only issue with the further expanded college football playoff with this model. We already had a situation in this 1 year of an expanded college football playoff where a team that did not even participate in, a team that did not even win its conference championship game, won the national championship. In this model, a 4th-place team in its own conference could win a national championship.
Yeah.
That sucks. And I'm getting a lot of tweets that say this, basically the same thing. If you're 4th best in your own conference, you shouldn't get to compete for a national championship. If you're 3rd best in your own conference, you shouldn't get a chance to compete for a national championship. Now, I know what Ohio State did this year was they got hot at the right time, they got healthy at the right time, and they looked like the best team in college football. It just doesn't look right. In the NFL, you have to win your conference to get to a Super Bowl. In this model, you can lose a bunch of games, you can rest guys, you can do the load management thing, you can strategically place yourself. If you're the top 4 in the SEC or the ACC and you get hot at the right time, you're golden. It devalues the regular season, and more importantly for me, it completely destroys the value of conference championships and conference championship games. Coaches will rest guys in a conference championship game. They will shirk the responsibility of competing for a conference championship first in order to set themselves up for a national championship run. They absolutely will do that because winning is tantamount, paramount. It is the only thing that matters in college sports. And a national championship. Look what happened. Ryan Day, in a year prior to this, would have been fired. And instead, he's a national champion and is the 2nd highest paid coach in all of college football. It's going to expand again, and the Big Ten and the SEC are being handed the keys to the kingdom because they generate the most revenue and the most money. College football is my favorite sport. It is my favorite thing to watch. It is I like it more than I like watching college football more than I like watching MMA. That's become my life. And this is the first real threat for me to that passion. Like NIL stuff, whatever. Transfer portal, I'm fine with it. It's not my favorite, but it hasn't affected my love of the game at all. I'm still married to the game, as we conducted the poll last week on. This, though, when you just tell the SEC and the Big Ten, you decide what's happening with college football. What's the point of everyone else playing?
Yeah, and like you said, why is the point of conference championships? What's the point of playing in a conference? Like, if you're going to rest your guys in a conference championship, like, what's the point?
That's the worst, man. That
It
is
is
the worst part of it. Ugh, I hate it so much.
And this is why I would love a 16-team playoff with no buys.
Well, a 16-team playoff with no buys is great, but if you're guaranteeing the Big Ten and the SEC, guaranteeing them 4 spots every year,
yeah.
And by the way, if you have a 16-team playoff, they'll get their guaranteed, and then they'll get another 2 in probably because
That's true.
Because of the biases that already exist. So handing over the control to the most powerful conferences is a survival tactic for the NCAA, because if you don't let them control things, they will just eventually move on. I understand why it's happening, but this is the first thing that I've looked at, the first change that I've looked at and been like, you know what? This one might actually make me love it a little less. Will I still watch it? Of course. Am I still going to talk about it nonstop? Of course. Is it going to make me love it just a little bit less? For certain. I already don't like the fact that Ohio State didn't have to win a conference championship and went on to win the national championship. I can justify it. I can excuse it because I can say, well, look, they put a really impressive run together through the playoff. And they capped off their season, which had a couple of head-scratching losses. They capped off their season with one of the most impressive runs we have seen in a 4-game span in all of college football history. So I'm like, all right, they deserve it. But this is going to create an NBA-level model of apathy.
It's going to be a controversy.
Like that. All right. Got to take a quick one. We'll start hour number 2 with the head coach of Utah women's basketball, Gavin Peterson, joining us next on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Kayla Moore catches straight away, loses the basketball. Jenna comes away with a steal. 3-on-2 fast break. Neepkins out to an open Kennedy McQueen three. It's good. Kennedy has tied her career high for three-point makes, as she has now hit 6 of them.
Tyson Ewing on the call. Kennedy McQueen has been a lovely re-addition to this Utah roster. Coming back from injury, 6 3-pointers against Arizona State. That sound courtesy of Utah Sports Radio Network. Utah women's basketball, one of the hottest basketball teams in the country right now. A big one tonight at the Huntsman Center. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Number 24, Oklahoma State Cowboys at 7 p.m. Gavin Peterson, the head coach of Utah women's basketball, joins us now to talk about this and the season that is rapidly coming to a regular season close, which is wild. Coach, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, OC. Really looking forward to tonight's matchup. So things are pretty exciting around here.
7 in a row for your ladies. What's been the key as you've looked back on these last 7 to the consistency and putting together this very healthy win streak against conference competition?
I think you nailed it on the head when you said the welcome back of Kennedy McQueen. It's really great to have her healthy, back in a Utah uniform, back in the starting lineup. It puts everybody back into their roles that they can kind of settle into for the rest of the season. And that's been the biggest, I think, adjustment, is having to play those 5 games without her. We competed, we did what we could, but we came out of that with a 2-3 record. She gets inserted back into the lineup with the clean bill of health and all the rehab that she put into it. So along with that, we have a player in Gianna Neepkins that has taken her game to another level in Kennedy's absence, and she's just been able to maintain that high level. And thus, you're giving other people like Jenna Johnson, Maya Torre, and Kennedy McQueen in last game where she goes 6 or 8 from the three-point line. That has a lot to do with Gianna Neepkins getting the brunt of the scouting report and the attention. So it's just great to be healthy at this time of year. It's tough to win in February because everybody's kind of going through those, bumps and bruises, aches and pains, and it's just about being able to fight through those little things to kind of get the job done.
So what is your philosophy on fighting through those little things, Coach? Because it's something that has become a major topic of discussion in pro sports, in college sports, where sometimes you have to play hurt. It's not great to play injured, and there is a difference between being hurt and injured, as you're well aware. But then there's also the right time to maybe take the foot off the gas pedal, let people rest a little. How do you find the balance?
Yeah, I think we have a great team that I'm surrounded with in terms of our sports performance team. We have a great trainer. We have a great strength and conditioning coach, and they collaborate, and we meet weekly in terms of what we should do based on our readings from, all the technology things where, they can test off a jump the day before a game, and we can really set forward a good plan of attack for the week that's upcoming. So I'm not that smart, so I rely on people smarter than me to help me stay in my lane and be able to do my job the best that I can do. But our sports performance team is second to none, and they're a very integral part in our success here at Utah.
So we were talking about, what Gianna Neepkins has done to elevate her game, and obviously Kennedy being back in the lineup alongside her has been great. You have multiple women on this roster capable of double-digit scoring every night. I mean, some of these games where you're pushing 100 points, you're getting 3, 4, 5 double-digit scorers. How easy is it to maintain like that? I don't know what the right word is. The chemistry when you have at least 3 people who could be the number one option on other teams.
Yeah, great point. I think they all chose Utah for a reason, and they all understand what makes Utah great is the fact that we are surrounded by unselfish players, very capable on any given night to go for 30 points. But our success is through the team. And I think they've bought in from day one. Obviously, our upperclassmen with Kennedy McQueen, Ines Vieira, Jenna Johnson, Gianna Neepkins, who have played so many games in Utah uniforms. They know what it takes. They know that when we deviate from the game plan and the team game, we're not as good. So we really rely on each other, and it's just a united team and very unselfish, and, we get things done. Speaking of, games in a Utah uniform, tonight's game, Kennedy will tie the record for most games played in the women's basketball game in our program in a Utah uniform at 138. So that's a huge legacy component. She's left her legacy here at Utah, and in today's day and age, I'm so thrilled and excited for her, her family, because it's a pretty cool deal.
It's pretty incredible just to have that impact on a program and to have the program being headed in the right direction and moving forward. Coach, what's it going to take for your ladies to get the national respect of and I know it doesn't matter a lot to you because it's all about wins and losses, but it is a little nod when there's a number next to your name. You know what I mean? When you're a top 25 team, and it feels like this win streak and the record that it's about time.
It's if we were doing a Zoom call or on FaceTime, I would be laughing because I'm wearing my Rock Under Armour sweatshirt that says the word respect over the chest. And it's not the respect for me. I don't necessarily covet it or need it, but I want to fight for the respect for our players because they deserve it. So that's my mentality. When I woke up today, it was just, I was ready to spit nails. Like, it is just one of those things that, we're going to keep knocking on the door. Sooner or later, we're going to kick it in. But it's about taking it. And I think the only way you get that respect is if you kind of put it in your hands. And tonight's a great opportunity for us to do so against a ranked team here in the Huntsman Center. So, we're ready to go, and we're excited about it. And I'm really looking forward to see where our team is at here towards the end of February as we get geared up for conference tournament and NCAA tournament. So I'm really excited to see where we're at.
Gavin Peterson, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. We're going to get to the matchup with Oklahoma State here in just a sec. I know, Coach, it's not about you. I'm going to make it a little bit about you right here. You're going to win more than 20 games in your first season as a head basketball coach. And I go back, rewind to whenever that became a possibility in your mind, like Gavin Peterson, head coach, whenever that was. I don't care if it was in 5th grade. Did that picture also include a 20-plus win season in your first year? It usually doesn't go that way. Usually you're taking over a struggling program and you're trying to get to a dozen and whatever else. You're gonna have 25 wins in your first season.
Yes, no, that is not lost on me in terms of being able to take over here at the University of Utah in a program that is going in the right direction and kind of established itself as one of the premier women's basketball programs over the last 3 years. It's not lost on me because had I gone elsewhere to get my first head coaching job, it would have been exactly what you said. It would have been the building process, the earning the team's trust, trying to figure out how to win, in your first year. Whereas in this, how things played out here, all I did was basically talk to our players, let them know, put their wandering minds at ease that there's going to be a stability component. There is going to be a continuity component. Things are still going in the right direction. And once we got through a few games, they could see it like, yeah, this is cool. We're good. We're good to go. So I haven't had to go through those type of things as a first-time head coach sometimes has to go through. So it's not lost on me. I am super humbled and thankful for this opportunity because it's the right fit. My 10th year here at Utah, I've recruited every one of these players or had put time into recruiting them. So they know me, I know them, I know their families. So it's been a really cool season where we've come together and we've just been resilient through all the adversity that has come our way. We just kind of attack it head on. And it's fun to know that here we are. We have a lot to still play for, and everything is just right there in front of us. Really cool.
Coach, do you have to encourage your ladies to show up and support the men when they got games like that Kansas one, or is that something that they're like, Coach, let us out of practice, give us no obligation so we can go watch these games.
Yeah, no, we support our men's basketball program 100%. We were actually, when we got to Fort Worth, Texas earlier in January, we played the next day, but we actually went to the men's game on the road before we played the next day. So we support them on the road if we can. We went to both games this past weekend. We got back from Tempe, Arizona, Saturday afternoon at about 6:30. Everybody just split from the airport, and I know they all headed here to the Huntsman Center. So it's really cool to kind of support each other. It was a big weekend for them, so congratulations to them, and hopefully they can keep it rolling. And, we're looking to continue that momentum and give our fans something to get really excited about tonight.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because I thought that was really neat to see that even on a travel day that your ladies made a point to show up and support their counterparts in that basketball program.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool. Gavin Peterson for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show. All right. What's the toughest thing about this Oklahoma State team? What's the scouting report on the Cowboys?
They have a lot of firepower on offense. It's kind of, they mirror us in a lot of different ways. So it's going to be, kind of a will of attrition to what are you going to try to take away. And if you're, I guess, able to do so, that should swing the momentum in that team's favor. But, I'm excited. We're at home. I think we're playing at a really high level. I wouldn't say we've peaked, but we're getting closer to hitting our full potential. So that's really exciting. I almost have to ask for your number yesterday to come talk to our kids about, getting into that octagon or that ring, and you look your opponent in the eye and like, all right, my will to win and my preparation to win outweighs yours. And that's, I'm just so juiced for tonight's game, dude. It is like, I couldn't sleep. I was in the office by 6 a.m. today.
Well, we're looking forward to it in the O'Connell household. It was funny last night. I'm trying to get my older two daughters are 5 and 3. I'm trying to get them to go to bed, and the 3-year-old won't leave the 5-year-old alone. The 5-year-old's trying to go to sleep. So I was like, I told the middle child, the 3-year-old, I said, just stay out here on the couch with me. Let your sister go fall asleep. And we're watching Utah basketball against Kansas State, right? And she's like, she's watching for a second, and she goes, Dad, where are the girls? Like, in her cute little 3-year-old voice. And I was like, no, this is the boys team. The boys team's playing right now. She's like, no, I want to watch the girls. I said, okay, well, tomorrow night they have a game. Maybe I'll take you if we can talk Mom into letting you out past bedtime. Like, I'll take you to the game. We'll go to the game. She's like, no, I want to watch the girls right now. So that's so your Utah basketball team is like highly anticipated in my household, at least, to the point where my 3-year-old is like, I don't want to watch the boys. Give me the girls, Dad. So
that's funny.
You guys are stars in our house.
Well, we appreciate it, man. It's a fun group to get behind. Not only are they great basketball players, but they're great people. Great for little girls throughout to look up to. They do it the right way. They stay out of trouble. They keep their nose down. They go to class. They do all the things you're supposed to do at this level, and that's why our program is in a position it is. It's just quality people. And, oh, by the way, they can play basketball too.
Yeah, they're also pretty darn good at that basketball thing. Coach, good luck tonight. Very much looking forward to it. Always appreciate your time, especially on a game day. We share your anticipation and your excitement for the evening. So good luck.
Awesome. Good talking to you as always, and go Utes.
Gavin Peterson and his team killing it right now. 7 in a row. They have won. Still not getting the respect from the pollsters, but a win over a ranked Oklahoma State team will almost certainly put them further into that conversation. Tough little road swing coming up to end the week. It'll be Cincinnati and then a really good West Virginia team on the road before they wrap up their regular season at home at the Huntsman against BYU on the afternoon of March 1st. So 4 regular season games left for your Runnin' Utes women, and only 2 of those are going to be on the home floor. I tell you that because tickets are available at utahtickets.com. Now is the time for you to get up there. when you talk about a family outing, something that's incredibly enjoyable, incredibly affordable, you can't do better than this. This is a really good basketball team right now. They are going to make some noise. I've been saying for weeks they've got a chance to make some noise in the postseason. This is a team, they are going to make some noise in the Big 12 basketball tournament and in the NCAA basketball tournament. They've got this dynamic duo right now, Kennedy McQueen being back, shooting the way that she is shooting, supporting Gianna Neepkins, who even in Kennedy's absence was able to carry them to a couple of victories. Like it's one of those things. It's we've all heard that that factoid about draft horses. Like one Clydesdale can tow 10,000 pounds, but two Clydesdales can tow 40,000 pounds or whatever. That the teamwork is what creates this exponential effect of load bearing. That's absolutely the case with this Utah women's basketball team. When they've got everybody healthy, everybody available, it's not just 1+1. It's somehow a multiplying effect of the production, the talent, the scoring, and the problems for opposition. So they're coming off a 98-point performance against Arizona State. Much tougher sledding against Oklahoma State tonight, but a team that's capable, and I fully expect to win. That game tips off at 7 p.m. You can hear it right here, Broadway Media and ESPN 700, your home of Utah sports, ESPN 792.1 FM, the Sean O'Connell Show. You're going to have to indulge me for the next 15 minutes or so, all right? I want to give a little groundwork, a little context to the discussion we're going to have with Rob Macy, who's the lead attorney on the UFC antitrust case. Most of you out there are probably not aware, or maybe you are, that the UFC underpays its fighters and has from the beginning of time, right? Well, starting more than a decade ago, several fighters finally filed suit and said, look, man, you are creating a monopoly, a hostile environment. There's a non-competitive environment here because you've suppressed competition. You've bought up your competition. Your negotiating tactics are illegal. All of these things, right? And several brave fighters stepped out and filed suit against the UFC. Now, this is effectively career suicide when they do this, right? And they've been battling it out in court for a decade plus now. Well, enough momentum was building. They had enough evidence. They had enough of a case that the UFC, instead of facing the $1.5 billion in damages, which I believe under antitrust laws in the United States would have tripled to $4.5 billion, in damages, they said, you know what, we're going to settle. We're going to quiet these people. We're going to give them money. Because the thought from the UFC side is all they want is money. The fighters are hoping for change as well. But when you've been battling it out for a decade plus in court, yes, they wanted some money too. So the UFC settled, and every fighter who was active from 2010 to 2017 is included in this class action suit. Guess who that includes? Your boy, me. Which means the hard work of this attorney, who we're going to talk to in 3 minutes, and the fighters who were brave enough to step out and file suit, helps me and 1,100 plus other people get more out of their fighting careers than they were able to with their own negotiating, with their own talent, with their own whatever. That's pretty significant. More importantly, it creates legal precedent that has established that, yes, indeed, the UFC did underpay fighters. There's another suit that goes from 2017 and beyond. Most of you know that the revenue split between the NBA and its players is like 49% to the owners, 51% to the players. In the NFL, it's 50-50. In Major League Baseball, it's right around that 50-50. NHL, it's right around that 50-50. In the UFC, it's anywhere from like 13 to 20% of revenue goes to the fighters.
That's insane.
It's insane. And these are the people battling to change that. So Rob Macy is going to join us next to talk about this suit, what it means for the fighters, what it means for the future of the sport of mixed martial arts. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. For your chance to see a Runnin' Utes home game, text Utes to 33986 now. Next home game is next Saturday, March 1st against Arizona State. Tickets are also available at utahtickets.com. Utes to 33986. Indulge me, if you will, on the Sean O'Connell Show. You know that I give you as much football and basketball and hockey as I can. Sometimes you're going to have to give me 10 minutes on the sport that has become such a huge part of my life, mixed martial arts. I just gave you some context on the UFC antitrust case, on the class action suit that has been settled, and the fighters are finally getting at least a little bit more of what they are due, largely because of the work and the effort of my next guest, Rob Macy, lead attorney on this case, kind enough to help me out and give you some more understanding of exactly how this all came about. Rob, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you?
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. Doing well. You?
Yeah, doing all right. Again, largely because of your efforts and, Kung Lee, John Fitch, Nate Quarry, Kyle Kingsbury, Brandon Vera, and others who decided to step out of line and say, hey, no, we need more than this. We need better than this as mixed martial artists. And, just help me set the stage for my listeners of how long this battle has been going on. How long ago did you become part of the fight to make mixed martial arts a little bit more fair, compensation-wise, at least for the fighters?
Oh, wow. So I got involved trying to start a fighters association back in 2005. And around 2009, I started advertising the possibility of an antitrust suit. I just needed plaintiffs. In April of 2012, a fighter from Toronto, his name is Carlos Newton, flew down to Arizona, met with me. At the end of that meeting, he said, we're filing an antitrust suit, and we started the next day. So formally been working on this case since April of 2012.
So why pick a fight with an 800-pound gorilla, Rob? Because I imagine that they have the UFC has pretty limitless resources for legal representation. Why pick this fight?
I was in a gym in Arizona, in Los Angeles back in 2001, 2, and 3, and one of our teammates early on got asked to be on the undercard of, I believe it was UFC 42. After his fight, he comes out to the stands and he's asking to borrow money to get home to Oregon. And I was like, what? So I started doing the math right away in my head. And it was obvious to me, even though at the time they were claiming they were losing money, that it wasn't true. And, it took a while to prove it wasn't true, but it wasn't true. I just got pissed off. And it was, sort of an intersection of, I knew how associations and the antitrust worked in sports, and nobody else was doing it. So I figured I could do it.
So, look, the Players Association in the NBA, the NFL, there's a lot of well-publicized stuff about how their negotiations go. We've had lockouts in all the major pro sports. Collective bargaining is part of American sports culture, but those are team sports. So why does a Fighters Association make sense in an individual sport?
We're not seeking collective bargaining. We're seeking free agency. I agree with you. Collective bargaining does not work in a combat sport because you literally cannot be employees. Since you're not employees, you can't bargain. You're not covered by the labor laws. But what we can do is we can use an association to file litigation and to lobby to get the Ali Act expanded from boxing to mixed martial arts. And what that would do is it would separate rank and title from the promotion, and that would create free agency that you don't have now. That's what will drive purses.
When I say something, or when we say something like, hey, you're going to adopt some things that have existed for a long time in boxing and you're going to apply it to mixed martial arts, I'm sure that causes some people to kind of clutch up and say, whoa, boxing has not been in a good place. Mixed martial arts is more popular now than it ever was, partially because of the corruption in boxing and how boxing kind of ruined itself. Ruined is probably a bit of a stretch, but is boxing a model that MMA really wants to follow is, I guess, a better way to ask that question.
It depends if you're the fighter or the promoter. If you're the fighter, there's no doubt. Look at the top 100 rankings and athletes in terms of earnings that just come out every year. There's no mixed martial artists on there, but there's like a half a dozen boxers.
Yeah.
That's true every year. Boxers make more than mixed martial artists at virtually every level of their career progression, all of them. And for those who think boxing struggles, they just prefer monopoly. That's what it is. They prefer fighter exploitation. They prefer the model where boxers have no choice but to fight in one spot. Well, if that's what you really want, what will happen is you'll get a UFC of boxing where boxers aren't paid. And that will end up crushing the sport because you'll see boxers exit. They'll leave. They are taking way too much damage to get paid 20% of the revenue like mixed martial artists do. In boxing, that split is reversed. The boxers are getting 80%. And if you think about it, that's correct because boxers are the product. You know, you're tuning in to see the boxers on the event. Nobody cares who promoted it or what letters are on the mat. For whatever reason, that's been kind of corrupted in mixed martial arts to where the show has taken predominance over the fighters, which is crazy.
So this settlement that the UFC finally came to, $375 million for around 1,200 fighters, and it'll be distributed based on a formula, how many times you performed, how much money you earned when you were a fighter in the UFC. The original number, though, was less than this. The original settlement agreed to was $325. Is that correct?
The original settlement was $335 million, and it covered two different classes. So it was both the Lee and the Johnson case. The second settlement was $375 million just for the Lee class. So for the Lee fighters, there was an improvement of over $72 million.
Wow, it's pretty significant.
Particularly since we have the other case still pending. We have another lawsuit pending.
Right, which was going to be my next question. So the Lee case is closed, right? So everyone who's a member of this class, 2010 to 2017, you're going to get your allotment, you're going to get your share, and that's it. No more damages, no more whatever. You're part of this, and you're golden. But the Johnson case is still open. Does one have an effect on the other? Does what happened, the ruling here, the settlement here in the Lee case, does it create any legal precedent, or does it change anything for the Johnson case?
The judge was adamant. He actually did fighters a solid here, I would say. The judge was adamant that if fighters accepted the Lee settlement, they were not waiving their Johnson claim. He made Zuffa put on the record that was the case. So fighters can take their checks in Lee, and if they're part of the Johnson class, they're still going to be part of the Johnson case moving forward. If we're successful, they get paid again, which is also very large. There's around 485 fighters, I believe, that were in both classes. So there's quite a substantial amount of overlap. It will not affect them. They will not be releasing their claims in Johnson. And then in terms of the case moving forward, the judge also ordered the entire discovery record from the Lee case is available to us in Johnson, which is also large. We don't have to redo a lot of the discovery we did before, subject to, he would allow Zuffa to object on grounds of relevancy if they wish, but it's available to us in the record, which is, pretty substantial for us.
So for the people out there listening, I think it's important for me to say this part, that the fighters that initially filed the suit, Rob, who obviously has been part of this battle for a long time, it wasn't just let's get as much money as we can for the fighters in this class or in the next class or whatever. It was also to provide injunctive relief or to force a change in the way that the UFC negotiates its contracts, the way that they are restrictive on the earnings of their fighters, the name, image, and likeness stuff. Rob, elaborate on that for me, if you will. I'm not doing it any justice, but I just don't want people listening to think, oh, they signed these contracts and then they decided they weren't enough and they just wanted more money. It goes well beyond that.
Yes, we asked for injunctive relief, which is an order from the court saying the UFC has to change certain business practices going forward. Now, in the Lee case, because the Lee case ended up delayed for so long, and this was not, any fault of really anyone, We got delayed by COVID for several years. And at the same time, we got delayed by, there was a Ninth Circuit appeal on class certification standards pending. At the same time, our class certification ruling was awaiting our judge's order. So you'll see between 2019 and 2023, August of 2023, virtually nothing in our case happened. Well, when the judge certified the LECAT class in August of 23, we're coming up on a trial date. And he asked us at that time, you're seeking injunctive relief, correct? And the answer was yes, that's correct. Well, in order to get an injunction, you have to show current market conditions, correct? The answer to that is yes. We had a 7-year gap. Our discovery stopped in the Lee case in 2016. So if we wanted to get injunctive relief, the judge was going to reopen discovery and likely going to combine the cases, which would have meant we're starting over. So at that time, we elected to split the cases. We'll go liability damages only in Lee, and we'll move the injunctive relief to the Johnson case. That's what happened for that reason. It was just a function of delay, and we were coming up on, do you want a trial date or do you want to redo discovery, possibly redo class certification, and delay this again by years?
Why did it make sense for the UFC to settle when, their fighters are notoriously disorganized, have a hard time agreeing on a lot of things, like this class that I am fortunate to be a part of, thanks to your efforts, is a bunch of different personalities. There's 1,000 of us. It's not like everyone's going to sit down around a table and agree on exactly what they need. So I'm being reductive here, but it seems like if I am this organization, if I'm a corporation, multi-billion-dollar corporation at this point, that I would look at that group and say, well, we can beat these guys in court. So why did it make sense for the UFC to settle?
That's one of the beauties of a class action lawsuit. They wouldn't have been dealing with 1,121 different personalities. They would have been dealing with our 6 named plaintiffs, who did an excellent job. They've been coached and trained for going on 12 years now. They were excellent speakers. They're excellent presenters, and they were great witnesses. So I think that put a little bit of fear into Zuffa. The UFC is now a public company, as you know. So their uncertainty puts a little weight on their stock. I think that played a part. And the fact of the matter is, if we go to trial, we're in front of a jury. Juries are crapshoots. You have no idea what they're going to do. They're very unpredictable. So cost certainty played a factor in their decision to settle the Lee case.
Do the named plaintiffs get a lion's share or a greater share than what their activity during the period in question would, I guess, justify on the formula?
Yeah, so we told the fighters when they initially signed on as plaintiffs, you might not get anything extra. We will ask the court to award you an incentive award for taking the risk and stepping out front and doing all the work. We did that. We requested $250,000 for each of the 6 named plaintiffs. The judge said, over the course of 10 years for the amount of risk and work these guys did, that's very reasonable, and he okayed it. That's the only extra that the 6 named plaintiffs get. They get an incentive award of $250,000 each, and then otherwise they're subject to the exact same formula that applies to everyone else.
As someone who is part of the class, that feels very modest to be the ones who led this charge and fought this battle so that people like me could benefit from it. $250,000 over 10 years, not a ton, Rob.
No, we totally agree. It's just, in a class, you can't ask for, you don't want to separate them from the class too much. This is probably on the higher side of incentive awards. But at the same time, as you probably well know, when these guys stepped out and did this, they were alone. There was no one backing them up. There was no one showing up in court. There was no one saying thank you. They were ostracized. That's starting to change now, but that's just the reality of what happened to them for years. One example I like to give is John Fitch. So John Fitch was at American Kickboxing Academy, a major worldwide gym out of San Jose, California. Right after we filed this case, he actually moved to Las Vegas to get out of that gym. He didn't want to threaten his teammates. That's the way these guys felt about it at that time.
That's such a crazy thing now with the hindsight of knowing that, this was a winnable case, and this is a case where the class is awarded $375 million, because absolutely the first people to step out and to say, hey, you can't treat us like this, of course, are ostracized by the company, but then everyone that you associate with, your coaches, your managers, your teammates, are worried about the backlash that could come back if you were supportive of that individual. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't going to step out, put my neck out in a situation like this, because I was trying to be in the UFC's good graces and trying to get them to put me on higher placement on cards and to pay me more money. I wasn't going to be like, yeah, John Fitch is right, and I want to sign on with whatever he's doing right now. It's wild that they were willing to take this on, because it was career suicide at the time.
That's almost exactly right. It wasn't just the company they had to look out for. It was their own colleagues who now wanted to distance from them because they we're a risk to them. Obviously 10 years later, we show a big victory. That's going to start changing now. I was teaching these guys all along, this is what happened in all the other sports. You're not going to be heroes initially. Probably far from it. But what you did say, and I want to latch on to this, the fear of fighters in the UFC is the UFC controls matchmaking, and they control your ascension and rankings. That's how they can dictate what you sign and why they have been able to reverse the split. If the UFC does not control rankings, then other promoters can compete for you. You're still ranked number 2 in the world. When Francis leaves the UFC, he's still the champion. John Jones has to chase Francis, not the other way around. The UFC can't just remove him from the rankings. That's not a sport. That's a production. They shouldn't have been allowed to get away with this, but they were.
So before I let you go, injunctive relief in the Johnson case still being sought. The Ali Act is, I know, something that would benefit fighters if we can apply it to the sport of mixed martial arts as it already applies to boxing. In the current climate, socially, politically, economically, whatever, how realistic are these goals for fighters and their camps in getting victory in this next case that's still open?
Injunctive relief, we're optimistic. We're going to get it in litigation in the same court that we were in the first case. If you read the class certification, or the judge is pretty damning about the UFC's business practices, and you can find that order on UFCclassaction.com. It's posted. And then in terms of the Ali Act, until this administration changes, we will likely be on defense, meaning I think there might be an effort to actually repeal the act for boxing. We definitely don't want that to occur, but figure in 4 years, we might be back in D.C. lobbying for it to be applied to MMA.
Rob, can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today, but especially your efforts over the last decade plus. I am a passive beneficiary of your effort and all the other guys, the named plaintiffs. It means a lot, so thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Thanks for covering.
That's Rob Macy, lead attorney on this UFC antitrust case. If this is stuff that you're into, if you're fascinated by sports contracts and things like that, they have operated under a different model than everyone else has, and Rob and company are trying to make that, trying to change that, trying to make it a little bit more recognizable in terms of sports compensation and the power that fighters have or don't have. In boxing right now, the way it works is if you are the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, you can box wherever you want to box, right? Now, these guys sign on and they do deals with agents and promoters and things like that, but there's governing bodies and ranking systems that they don't own the boxer effectively. So boxers have a lot of choice. And, okay, do I want to go compete right now everyone's going and fighting in Saudi Arabia because the Saudis have absurd amounts of money and they're putting on these promotions and they're saying, all right, we want you to bring your top rank boxing title and your WBO boxing title, and we want you to put that up against this guy who's got whatever, and we'll unify the heavyweight belts here. And we saw that with Usyk and Fury. And by the way, you're going to make, $30 million each or $20 million each to do it. So the fighters are more in control of their own careers. I mean, Floyd Mayweather can't read. Floyd Mayweather literally is an illiterate and is one of the richest men on earth because he is in control of his own promotion and his own career as a boxer. Not because he's hyper intelligent, people. He's an uneducated individual. I'm not saying that to insult him. I'm saying that to tell you, how different the boxing world is than the MMA world right now. And I'm also not one of these people who is sitting here asking you to cry for myself or any other fighter who was undercompensated. I signed the contract. I participated. No one forced me to do it. I was willing. I was eager. I was able. But this lawsuit is going to put more money in my pocket because these guys stepped out of line and said, no, we need better than this. We haven't seen anything like that in the other major sports in recent history.
No, not at all.
And it's pretty awesome, and I thank Rob for his time today and for his efforts on this whole deal. I'm also part of a group thread with all the fighters in this case. Way too many people on a group text thread.
How many?
Way. Right now, it's like 800 people.
Holy.
It's on a WhatsApp. It's way too many people.
You said it was on WhatsApp?
It's way too many people. That's just too many. When you put your phone down for 20 minutes and you pick it back up, there's 100 new texts in the thread. It's too much.
Your phone's just going bzz, bzz, bzz,
Oh, thankfully, I have my notifications off, but woof. All right, got to take a break. Big thanks to all of you for listening, to Rob Macy for lending some context to that discussion. Self-serving for me to get a better understanding, but I hope you enjoyed it. It's ESPN 792.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
Harley's on the move again, and then turns back. Over the boards, King Jarvis takes the pass. Crosby had that broken up. And away goes Larkin. It's a 2-on-1. Larkin scores! Dylan Larkin, and Team USA has the lead.
USA added an empty netter as well. Victory over Canada, guaranteeing them a spot in the Thursday night championship game in the Four Nations. It was an intense and amazing USA versus Canada match. Robin Leano, Utah Hockey Club insider, kind enough to join us here, talk a little hockey on a Tuesday that feels like a Monday because of the holiday yesterday. Robin, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Just going to be ready for more hockey.
The Four Nations, look, we were talking, I don't know how many times, Pro Bowl in the NFL stunk, lame, silly all-star situation. This past weekend, the NBA All-Star, they obviously don't have things figured out. Major League Baseball, you got the home run derby that people care about. The All-Star game itself is hit or miss. People just make fun of the uniforms. And then the NHL comes along with this Four Nations thing for the break and captures everybody, making it about loyalty, the home soil, wearing the country's flag on your chest, all that kind of stuff. This thing is a massive hit, Robin.
Oh, it has been, and I'll be one of the first to admit that I was critical of the Four Nations going into it. I didn't know what to expect from this tournament. I was like, hey, we're seeing a header tournament. It might be just like another All-Star where it's players not really giving all that much effort going in because it's mid-season. But man, was I wrong. And I'm glad I was, because it's been some of the most exciting international hockey I've been able to watch in a while. Best on best makes it all that much more fun.
Well, best on best, and also best on best when they care and there's real effort. And obviously that was the case, especially in that USA-Canada matchup.
Oh, that rivalry is one of the most intense. I tell everybody, if you don't watch hockey, maybe you just want to get into it, and you're watching international hockey for the first time, watch a U.S. versus Canada game. You will love it.
So everyone is trying, because this is what people do, everyone is trying to make this a political thing right now with the booing of the national anthem and obviously the current administration and their, I guess, posturing towards Canada and Canada's response to that. The rivalry, to me, is the rivalry. I can't imagine that players on either side are bothered by the political stuff here, but I could be wrong. I haven't spoken to any players about this. I mean, just knowing professional athletes, they hardly have an opportunity to put their head up and watch television. I don't know how dialed in they are on the current rivalry between presidents of their respective countries. I think that was like, no player wants to hear their national anthem booed, but I don't think that contributed to the intensity of the game the way that people want to create that narrative. What is your stance on that?
No, I'm with you. I don't think that really contributed. Do I think that the booing of the national anthem might have given Team USA that extra push that they wanted? I could make an argument that it did give them that kind of. They played they've been playing some amazing hockey. But what I will say this is, regardless of Team USA is just so incredibly stacked. Canada is as well, but both of these clubs, both of these teams, Team USA and Team Canada, you just look up and down the roster. I mean, there is no reason why you're going to see that level of talent and just that level of intensity between these two teams.
How much McAvoy's been ruled out. Charlie McAvoy is going to miss the championship game Thursday because of an upper body injury. How much is that going to hurt their chances in the Canada-USA rematch?
I don't know if it's going to necessarily hurt their chances. I mean, having a guy, missing a guy like McAvoy is huge. He has that physicality. We're going to see that, but honestly, I just don't think it's going to. I won't see it matters all that much. You got a chance to see no matter who. You take your pick on either side. I'm going to look down on, Team USA side. You have the Kachuk brothers who, if everyone knows, everyone watched the first, the first round of these two teams, who are both of them got in a fight got in fights against Canada in the first 6 seconds of the game. They will certainly step up, likely again, make an impact. But Jack Eichel, you take your pick on anyone on Team USA. They will step up as an X factor.
Robin Leonio, my guest here, talking a little hockey on the Sean O'Connell Show. Does the loss to Sweden give anyone pause, any concern that you're not just going unblemished through this Four Nations?
I really don't think so. That game, to me, it didn't really surprise me all that much. I feel like Sweden, they put in all that extra effort, because at that point they were playing for pride. Sweden knew that none of this, all they needed was a win, because they lost to Canada, they lost to Finland, so they just needed one win. They wanted one win out of them, and I'm sure all the players kind of felt that they wanted to bring home at least something to their fans, and so to see that happen, it really, to me, doesn't need all that much. And maybe on the U.S. side, it just gives them all that extra, like, hey, we lost. Let's take a look at what did go wrong. Let's address that, fill up those holes, because we have Canada coming up. They won't let that happen.
So as we talk about hockey's place among the other sports in America, and that we saw the article how bad the television ratings have been for hockey, this is certainly going to help. This Four Nations thing that's captured the attention of the sports audience in the States especially is certainly going to help, I think, in the remainder of the regular season. One thing, though, we're talking about an all-star break effectively, and we're talking about star players getting banged up. I mean, Brady Tkachuk left the game, and he's going to play on Thursday, but a big collision, and he's out of the game. And McAvoy, we already talked about, out of the game. If we were talking about injuries that could affect a player's, the rest of their season, if we were talking about that in any other sport, the league office itself would just be like, nope, we can't do this anymore. And Bettman and company, they've doubled down and said, we're not only going to do this for our All-Stars, we're going to do a World Cup of hockey. We're going to cycle it opposite the Olympics. Why is hockey so open to doing this? Hockey itself is inherently dangerous. They're willing to let their guys, even their big-time stars, play in matches, play in competitions that are not relevant to the Stanley Cup. They're not relevant to the NHL season, and yet they want this to happen. Why is the NHL so different in that regard than the other leagues and teams in the other leagues?
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to say is kind of more of like, I'm not sure if the NHL wants to promote this aspect or not, but the first aspect is we're talking hockey players here, not putting any of the other athletes down of the other major sports, but hockey players in their own, they tend to hide their injuries. They will double down on themselves if they break something, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs or wherever they will keep going, do whatever it takes to win. I mean, international stage, though, we're talking a sport that has such a diverse level of players from all around the world. And we're seeing that right now in the Four Nations. A lot of teams, a lot of players representing these four countries in this Four Nations tournament: U.S., Canada, Sweden, and Finland. But what we're not seeing are players, some of the best players from the other countries that are also really heavily represented in the National Hockey League, in the Czech Republic, in Russia, in Germany, Poland, Switzerland. You take your pick on any other European country, there is a handful of NHL players, some of the best players in the world, who represent those countries. And I think that's really why the NHL is really hammering down on that and really wanting to double down on that, because they want these players to represent their countries, especially after this period of time where they didn't get a chance to in the Olympics.
Robin Leonio for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things hockey. Shifting the focus to the Utah Hockey Club, Oli Mata, and Juuso Välimäki, who are part of that Finnish team in the Four Nations Challenge. Oli talked about how eager he is to get back to the Utah Hockey Club, about his optimism for finishing out the season and what's available. They're still, what is it, 5 or 6 points right now out of the final wild card spot, but a team that feels like with everybody healthy, they could build some momentum. As you come out of this Four Nations break, what should we be looking for as fans of this club, pointing towards a playoff run potentially, or at least a push for the playoffs?
Yeah, right as we come back from this break, the trade deadline is coming right up there, and what we're really going to see is Bill Armstrong at work. Bill Armstrong has the last few years kind of either would have his team either stay put, would sell a little bit. With Utah being right there on the cusp, let's not be surprised to kind of see exactly how he feels this is going to go by determining, hey, are we going to do like a little bit of a soft sell here, or are we going to go in and buy some talent, go focus on that future? I wouldn't be surprised to see Bill Armstrong make a swing here to try to make at least a little bit of an extra push.
So as we look at the short-term schedule, this Utah Hockey Club had their long home stretch that I thought so many of those were winnable games, and then it kind of reversed. They beat the Winnipeg Jets and lost to teams with bad records. As you look at the next few games on the slate, where are the best opportunities for this team to get some points?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, again, in the NHL, it's, to me, I never consider certain games as always like, I'm never going to consider anyone going to be a sure thing. I'm going to preface with that. That said, I'm taking a look at some of the games coming up here. Coming back on Saturday, they got the Kings, then the Canucks, the Blackhawks, the Wild, and the Devils is their next slate of games. I feel like it's not going to be a shocker here for everybody saying that they should beat the Blackhawks. Other than that, those are tough games. Kings, I think, would be one I'd like to see Utah take a win at. The Canucks, the Wild, they're tougher. They're going to be tougher matchups.
So Clayton Keller was a snub from the Four Nations roster, and I saw something, I think last night, that he might be talked about as someone who could potentially fill out and be the injury replacement for McAvoy, who's going to miss the final. But that's got to be an emotional thing. Like, even though these guys are pros, when you get a chance to be invited and recognized as one of the best, and he's played as well as he's played, and obviously, the decision makers said, no, we're not going to involve Clayton Keller. Will it affect his play for the rest of the season? Is he going to have his hair on fire wanting to prove himself? Is he going to be discouraged by the idea that he's not regarded universally as one of the best American players in the game? Will it have an effect at all?
It's really interesting, because it's actually a conversation that I've had a decent amount over the last couple of months, ever since the roster was originally announced for the Four Nations, and seeing Keller off that list was a shocker to me. I will not shy away from saying that was a snub. And I talked with my co-host, the Lockdown Show, Tom Callahan, and we pretty much agreed that for someone like Keller, it's a boost for him. He looks at it as a challenge. He said, okay, I'm not viewed right now as one of the best American players. I'll show you that I am. And we see a lot of glimpses of that over the last couple of months. We see some really amazing stretches from Clayton Keller, and now post-tournament, we'll probably see more of that. We'll see him really ramp those up as well. try to probably make a push for to make Team USA in the 2026 Winter Olympics.
So it's going to be Quinn Hughes, by the way, for all you people who are wondering why I mentioned Clayton Keller as a potential injury replacement. The decision was for Quinn Hughes to join Team USA for the Four Nations face-off final game. It will not be Clayton Keller, but we talk about this all the time in sports. There's like the alternate guys, the alternate all-stars, the injury replacement all-stars in every sport. He was in that conversation, but it's going to be Quinn Hughes who steps in for the injured Charlie McAvoy. I saw a graphic earlier today, actually, and I should have retweeted it because that would have kept it on my feed. But it was something to the effect of, nobody in the NHL has two guys under the age of 25 scoring at the clip that Utah Hockey Club does. Nobody has a Clayton Keller and a Dylan Gunther that are so young in their careers and putting up big points right now. Everyone's got one, but nobody has two. Having those guys on the roster and presumably keeping those guys on the roster together from a short-term and a long-term perspective, what can it mean for this team?
Oh, that means so much to see the youth of this team scoring at this level. To me, it says one really big thing is that ideally, in the ideal world, that they're sustainable, that this team is going to be good, and they're going to continue to get better, and they're going to be a competitor for a long time.
Robin, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, as always, for lending your perspective to the show. We'll see you and talk again soon.
Yeah, of course.
Robin Leano, host of the Utah Hockey Club podcast on Locked On Utah Hockey Club. Utah Hockey Club insider. I put a poll out, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I was trying to articulate the right way without it being insulting or making assumptions. It feels to me like when you talk about professional athletes at the pinnacle, at the very, very height of their sport, and look, that includes all sports, not just team sports, but we're going to focus on the four major team sports in the United States of America. And all due respect to soccer, I know that you're huge, especially in certain communities, and a rising wave, so to speak. It's still not one of the big four. And really there's a big three, and then hockey, hopefully, now that we've got it here in Utah, can elbow its way back into that conversation from a revenue standpoint, a television rating standpoint, all that stuff. I put the poll question based on what you can observe as a fan. What pro athletes care the most about actual competition, about actual winning, about their actual sport? Like the purity of the game, the thing that got you into it in the first place. What leagues athletes are still closest to that love, that joy, that whatever you want to call it, of the sport that you experienced when you were a kid? Who cares the most about their sport? NFL players, Major League Baseball players, NBA players, or NHL players? Right now, I think it's hockey guys. Now, I'm being led by recency bias here, by that USA versus Canada thing. Hockey guys just seem like they care more. They play hurt. Hockey guys battle through constant injury, a physical, nasty schedule. The culture is just less of a complaining culture. I'm sure they have. I'm not as in the weeds with hockey contracts and things like that as we are with collective bargaining in the NBA and the NFL, because it just hasn't been on our radar as long or as intensely, and the money's certainly not as big. But you don't hear the load management conversations as often. Guys are almost embarrassed when they have to take time off. It feels like NHL players care more about the sport than anybody else does. I don't know where I would put the NFL, because I think that is an individual basis. There are so many guys that love the game intensely, and their salary is almost like secondary to their need to be a football player. It's such a huge part of their identity. And eventually, you know, that escapes everyone as you get old and hurt and whatever else. There's guys in the NBA that I think love the sport more than anything else. And there are other guys I think are just tall. And they're just good athletes, and they're like, yeah, well, I'm doing this even though I don't like it. And it's always the culture of the sport more than it is the culture of where a person comes from when you get to these professional leagues, because you are you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. And if you're a professional athlete, that's your coaches, your teammates, your whatever. So whatever their thoughts are on things, it's going to have a massive, massive influence over you and your agent and the general practices of the business and all that kind of stuff. But go to @RealOC Sports on Twitter or weigh in at 877-353-0700. Based on what you can observe as a fan, which pro athletes care the most about their sports? Major League Baseball players, NFL players, NHL skaters, hockey players. It almost feels weird to call them players because that's how tough the sport is.
Yeah.
It's like no one says you play fighting. What would you rather play, boxing or MMA? You don't play those things, right? Hockey's almost on that level for me. And if I expand this conversation to the greatest, like all the sports, even the individual sports, then it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
In the team sports, I think right now for me, it's pretty clear it's like hockey number 1. I don't know if baseball or football is next. NBA is probably somewhere down at the bottom. Individual sports, like where does golf fit in? How many of these guys are just like junkies for golf, just obsessed with golf, and they can't live any other life? They won't have it any other way. The racing guys, the NASCAR dudes, like that Formula One guys, those people are absolute lunatics for their sport. For the most part, how many of them, though, are just like, I'm super talented and I happen to be connected to the people who have the fastest car. So I don't know, like that becomes a really fascinating conversation for me. And again, it's based only on what we can observe as fans, because we don't know the full story. We don't actually, until you get truly to know someone, not you get to talk to them 3 times. You really know someone. Are you able to tell how much they love their job, how much they love what they're doing? Do they care about this sport? Do they care about the growth of it? We had an attorney on the show earlier today that is desperately eager to improve the sport of mixed martial arts from an athlete perspective. Like, that's a guy who loves the fight game. He wants to change it long term. Is he going to profit from it? Yes, of course. He's an attorney. That's what they do. But he was willing to fight for 10 years on this one particular case before he got paid. So that's someone who probably loves it. Those fighters that stepped out and sued the UFC, those guys love the sport. They don't just love being fighters and winning. That's where I fit, okay? I love fighting. It's fun to fight, especially when you win. Like, fighting is fun. Am I so deeply invested emotionally in the growth of the sport that I would have risked my family's financial future like these guys did? Hell no. Like, do I want the sport to grow and get bigger than boxing and bigger than tennis and bigger than all the other individual sports? Yes. Would I have stuck my neck out the way that those guys did just because I love the sport that much? I'm sorry to admit for you that the answer is no, I would not. I just like fighting. It's fun.
Yeah. I think another thing is like players who are currently like loving their sport are also inspired by like past athletes. Like we see like the comparison of like, oh yeah, Peyton Manning inspired me to play football, or like Tom Brady inspired me to play football, or like Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo inspired me to play soccer, football, European soccer, whatever. Same thing. You know, that's like, I think inspiration comes into play of it too, of like loving that sport. Disagree, agree?
Agree. All right, we got to take a break here. Sean O'Connell Show, plenty left to get to. I want to jump back into the conversation about the SEC and the Big Ten being given too much control over the college football playoff. Lots of crazy stuff going on here. Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sometimes I speak in absolutes on the show, and it's not a good thing to do, but I do it anyway. And I've done that with college football. Nothing could affect my love for college football. I love it too much. Give it 3 minutes, and I might change my opinion here. ESPN 792 on FM. We're pleased to announce the return of Dropkick Murphys. They're coming with Bad Religion to the Union on August 2nd, 2025. Tickets go on sale February 20th. If you listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts all week, you'll have a chance to win a pair of tickets. So Dropkick Murphys with Bad Religion coming. Love that. I touched on this earlier during the hot lunch. You probably weren't listening back then. That was a couple hours ago now. For the second time in 4 months, SEC and Big Ten leaders are going to sit down in person and discuss the future of the college football playoff. They're meeting in New Orleans. They're going to talk a lot of different things, okay? They're going to talk about the revenue sharing model that's being proposed and the Title IX compliance or non-compliance that they're going to be forced to do, the House versus NCAA settlement, that kind of stuff. What's going to happen with the NCAA? What's going to happen with the NCAA is determined 100% right now on the SEC and the Big Ten. Their place in college football and in college basketball is now attached to whether or not the Big Ten and the SEC still like them. That's where the NCAA is at with their governance of college football. So we just had one expanded college football playoff. Now in 2026, everything's open for discussion again. So we'll get a second college football playoff under this 12-team format. I presume that no crazy decisions are going to be made before then. But multiple reports coming out, ESPN Insider, Sports Illustrated, multiple places are reporting this now, that the SEC and the Big Ten are discussing their preferences for what is going to happen with college football in an expanded college football playoff format that would guarantee both of those leagues 4 teams in the college football playoff. 4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams. Under one proposal, 2 Big 12 teams, 2 ACC teams, an at-large bid potentially for Notre Dame, and then perhaps, most likely, a team from any of the other conferences, the Mountain West, the Conference USA, the American, whatever, right? So if my math is correct, let's see, there's 1, there's 2, okay, there's 6. Okay, that's a 14-team playoff. In the 14-team playoff, the 1 and 2 seed would get the first round bye. Everyone else battles it out, and then they get to sit back and watch. Now, I was already wrong about how important those first round byes are. So I'm often wrong with prognosticating what's going to happen with these proposed changes. But the SEC and or the Big Ten deciding that everybody else gets less than half of the access from a total perspective of college football playoff inclusion and being handed the control in this situation is a slippery slope to where they say, you know what, we actually don't need the Big 12 at all. We don't need the ACC at all. And we don't need Notre Dame to be an independent. So let's just cherry pick the ones we like. And they are now Big 10 teams or SEC teams. And everyone else can figure out their own thing because the television networks want us and our college football playoff. So whether there's 40 of us or 64 of us or however many in that range, we're just going to do our own thing here. That's the direction that we know we've been headed for a long time. And I thought that, you know, the current length of certain television contracts, I think the ACC's is like 20 into the mid-2030s. I thought that would protect college football from where it's at now, but we know that there's litigation going on at this moment for Florida State, North Carolina, some of these teams to try to get out of that grant of rights, try to get out of those television deals. And that we have already handed the control of college football over to whoever makes the most money. And right now, who makes the most money So, of course, who's going to continue to make the most money because no one else can upset the apple cart and flip this thing upside down. It's the Big Ten and the SEC and also, I guess, Notre Dame, who somehow has survived as an independent because they are effectively a Big Ten team from a financial standpoint.
Weren't they an ACC team during COVID?
They were an ACC team. They have an ACC scheduling agreement, and they have an ACC inclusion for other sports outside of football. But from a football finance and football power structure thing, and not to mention the geographic location, they're a Big Ten team.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever that happens, whenever they're given a true ultimatum that says, hey, dude, we're breaking off, we're doing this thing, the NCAA doesn't govern this anymore, you want to be part of what we do, not part of what they do, then the Notre Dame will leave the rest of their ACC compatriots in the dust. They're not going to die on any hill for the sake of NC State. We know that.
Yeah.
But this is all happening so rapidly that, 2 times in 4 months, the glacial pace at which conference and university officials do anything, 2 times in 4 months meeting in person and talking about this, that is like a frenetic pace. That is as fast as it gets.
Yeah, it's not even been like a month since the national championship of Ohio State winning it, which is also crazy.
And Ohio State did not win their conference championship, got included in the college football playoff because of the new rules and an expanded format. And the Big Ten looked at that and was just like, man, this worked out really well for us. We got the eventual national champion. Ohio State went on this epic run. We got one of our nobody schools, Indiana, got included. We got the financial boost from that. Indiana, maybe some upward mobility from that. This whole college football playoff thing for us here in the Big Ten, that works out really, really nicely. We want more of this. And, of course, the SEC has been gobbling up and wanting more and getting more for years now. So these two teams are now the power structure. These two conferences are the cabal of elites in college football getting to decide the fate of your college football playoff. And I put a poll question out just to gauge your interest. None of this is going to affect anything, but would you rather see a 14-team expanded playoff format or a 16-team with no buys? It'd just be the top 16 teams in the country. 4 of those would be, I guess, SEC teams, and 4 would be Big Ten teams. And then aside from that, they're the top 16. Notre Dame always has a place as long as they're in that top 16. This year would be, the Boise States of the world. They would get in. Would you rather see that 14 or 16 teams? Right now, everyone says 16. That's what the FCS does. That works great for everyone. We like that format. Okay, wonderful. Are you willing, though, to watch it happen with 2 conferences that your favorite school is not a part of right now, determining the future of everybody? And maybe the better question here, because it will eventually come down to this, is the SEC or the Big Ten ever going to call the University of Utah and say, you know what, we're doing our own thing now, but we want you to be here with us?
That would be an interesting change.
You're one of the teams from the Big 12 that we think, from a market perspective, from a television ratings perspective, from whatever, is worth keeping around. We talked with our friends in the SEC who don't have to worry about markets or television ratings or anything like that because they're in the SEC, and we decided that we want you to be part of this. Is Utah ever going to get that phone call? I have a hard time believing the answer is yes. Is BYU going to get that phone call? I have a harder time believing that the answer is yes, because these university presidents do pretend to care about the academic standing stuff.
Yep, they do.
So right now, less than a month after you watch a month after you watch the College Football National Championship played in an expanded format for the very first time, we're already talking about building this thing up again and doing it differently. Possible changes for the 2025 season will have to be unanimously agreed upon 2026 changes do not have to be unanimous. The SEC and the Big Ten are meeting together to discuss both, with seeding at the top of the list for the potential quick fix for this fall. Everyone's going to agree to that. Every conference is going to agree to conference champion doesn't automatically get the first round bye. It didn't end up helping anybody. It didn't help Boise State. It didn't help Arizona State. And it certainly didn't change the outcomes because the bye was just not relevant. The possibility of guaranteeing 4 spots in a practical sense, if you're a top 2 or 3 team in the Big Ten, you're always going to be ranked in the top 15 in the country, so you're going to get invited anyway.
Right.
Now, there are going to be outlier years where neither of these conferences merit having that many teams in. This past year was one of those for the SEC. You had LSU and you had Ole Miss and all these teams complaining about how, I can't believe Arizona State's going to get in. Well, just don't be a 4-loss team.
Yeah.
Don't be a 3-4 loss team, and you'll get a little bit of love. You'll get invited to this party. The final rankings, let's see here. You had Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, Arizona State, Boise State, Tennessee, Indiana, Ole Miss, SMU, BYU, Clemson, Iowa State, Illinois. So not only does the Big Ten have to decide, all right, if we get 4 teams guaranteed, do we care enough about Illinois to advocate for them to also be in as a non-guaranteed at-large? Or did we get what we wanted by having the 4 teams that are guaranteed in there? Because in that case, you're protected with, you got Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State in, and then Indiana got thrown in kind of as the afterthought because of their wild season, right? That's cool for you. You're probably happy with that. The SEC, they've now got Texas, they've got Georgia, they've got Tennessee, and they got Ole Miss. They're fine. In this case, Arizona State and BYU checked the 2 automatic bids for the Big 12 off from this past season, right? The ACC, ACC. Clemson's way down there.
So it would be SMU, right?
SMU's way down there. I mean, if you look at the final rankings from this year, are you cool with all of those teams being given an opportunity to compete for a national championship in a further expanded college football playoff?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
At Real OC Sports is how you respond to the poll. 877-353-0700 is how you text me. I'm going to give away some tickets next. We're going to talk with Spence Checketts. We're going to wrap up the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92 on FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up. I'm going to give away some tickets, 877-353-0700. The Lumineers coming to Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. Since we're all dialed in on Four Nations and the USA-Canada rematch coming on Thursday, what Team USA star has been ruled out due to an upper body injury that actually hospitalized him? We talked about this a little bit earlier. 877-353-0700. Team USA player ruled out of the final for 2 tickets to the Lumineers at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on July 30th. July 30th. January's already over, people. Crosstalk presented by Advanced Window Products. If you need new windows, go to Advanced Window Products. Local manufacturer, local sales, local installation, local everything. Run, of course, by the mayor of Sac Lake City himself, Nate Orchard. $2,500 off. 10 windows or more at advancedwindows.com or 801-850-9100. Spence Checketts, how was your long weekend?
Just had to wet the whistle a little bit.
Yeah, fair.
Good weekend. I'm not sick, but I got a little something, right? Fighting it. Little chest situation. So a lot of relaxing. Hung out with some friends. Tried to watch all the All-Star stuff. And we got a couple good NBA guests. We'll talk about it today. By far, the most entertaining thing on television was Four Nations, U.S., Canada. 3 fights, first 9 seconds. But, yeah, I did a lot of relaxing, got laundry done, bunch of stuff around the house, spring cleaning, then chill with some friends. Good weekend. Nice to get a little time off.
The first time that the NHL has ever dunked on the NBA was on NBA All-Star Weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and this is a soccer guy, of course. Hockey, like soccer, always seems to get this random bump occasionally, a great Stanley Cup final. When the U.S. plays Mexico in soccer, everyone goes crazy. And U.S.-Canada hockey, it's among the best rivalries in all of sports. It really is.
Awesome.
We're not reminded of it because they don't play very often. It's been 9 years since international play, and I think that's the first time the U.S. beat Canada in, 25 years, if I read that correctly? So I'm already juiced for Thursday night, man. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And I think, for the NHL, it's a real moment that hopefully they can capitalize on, and especially here in this market as we're all the neophytes and the newcomers to the NHL world. How fun. How cool. Only downside is that we don't have a guy. Utah Hockey Club does not have a guy there.
Ali Mata had the game-time assist for Finland or whatever. But, now it's U.S.-Canada Thursday night. It would be nice if Clayton Keller or somebody was available. Did a texter guess the player that's out? Did you get the right answer?
Let me see. I got to pull it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Charlie McAvoy.
Because I think that was the hit that Charlie put on Connor McDavid. I think he hurt himself because that was a big hit. And, I'm no, hockey insider, but kind of the unwritten rule in hockey is you don't go after the other team's best skill position player. Nobody ever hit Wayne Gretzky. Players rarely hit Sidney Crosby. They hit Ovechkin because Ovechkin wants it. He's a hitter, right? So I thought McAvoy's hit on McDavid was like an underrated part of that game. Because Canada was favored in that game. It was, of course, on their home soil. They booed our national anthem, as the story goes, as our upcoming 51st state. So they apparently were not happy about that. And so I think it was kind of like a moment of national pride. Like, boo our national anthem. All right, 3 fights in 9 seconds, and we actually beat you on your soil.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
And now I've been told if we actually win, if Team USA wins on Thursday night, then – yes, we've annexed Canada now. It's
official.
Yeah, that's how it's going to be determined.
I didn't tell you over the weekend I renamed the Great Salt Lake the Great Salt Spence. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Why would you call it the Great Salt Spence instead of the Great Spence Lake?
You know what?
Because it's a lake still.
Done. I just did it. Better idea.
What about the Great Spence Checketts Lake?
Exactly.
That runs a little bit better.
Yeah, it does. And you know what else I love? So you referenced McAvoy's out. Both Kachuk brothers are questionable with upper body injuries, and they both today were like, we're playing. Hockey players play hurt.
Yes.
They always have. One of the things I love about them is they're tough dudes, and they're not fake tough dudes. Hockey players play injured all the time.
I am a prisoner of every moment, right? I'm low-hanging fruit all the time, and so that's where this poll question came from. Based on what you can see or observe as a sports fan, what pro sport the athletes care the most about competition, about the sport itself? NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA.
I would say it's either NHL or NFL. It's either hockey or football players.
That's where right now, because of the Four Nations, it's 72% of people are like, it's the NHL.
Yeah.
It feels that way. NBA dead last, as I expected.
As it should be.
But, yeah, that's a question. At Real OC Sports if you want to vote.
And if you want to get as reductive as possible, we're going to talk about this on the show today. Money has changed pro basketball, and it actually changed pro baseball a long time. Marshall Faulk tells this funny story. When he was working with Deion Sanders at the NFL Network, they were both on the media side of television coverage for pro football. Deion invited Marshall Faulk and Marshall's wife over to their home for dinner. And Marshall and his wife walked into the house, and Marshall Faulk turned to his wife and said to her, "This is baseball money." Deion's wife, baseball money, right? Because Major League Baseball, like pro basketball, once the contracts became guaranteed and once the money became so ridiculous, it's very easy to draw a pretty straight line between that day and the care factor of these athletes. I mean, LeBron, a few hours before the game, was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to show up for warm-ups in sweats and a hat on backwards. Like, I'm just not playing. And it's not just an all-star game thing. It's a regular season game thing too, where a lot of these players don't show up to play. They just will stay home, or they show up and they go through the motions because their bank account's not affected by it at all. There was a day in pro basketball where the players actually needed the money. They played for their paychecks. And it's a complicated thing. It's almost like what we're running into in college sports right now. I believe for years and years and years, owners in pro basketball were highly underpaying the players, and it was an oligarchy where all these old rich dudes were just making more money, and the players were fighting for their share. Then, the collective bargaining agreement in the early, I think it was 94, kind of changed things when contracts became guaranteed and players received basically an even share of basketball-related income, which they should receive. The problem is, and I'm not even judging them because you and I have talked about this, if I had a guaranteed $25 million deal no matter what I did on air, on a Thursday afternoon, if I'm tired, I'll roll in, I'll make fart noises in the microphone. Like, I'm not judging the players.
My salary's not even guaranteed, and I do that sometimes.
Fair enough. I'm not judging the players. I'm saying the way that the league is set up now with, for whatever reason, the players do not. And Draymond, love him or hate him, he kind of nailed it over the weekend. There's no urgency in games. And you know who talked about this 2 years after he retired was Kobe. There's a great Kobe soundbite. Just look up Kobe Bryant accidental basketball where he just nailed it. And it's only getting worse and worse and worse. And if as a league you're relying on your international revenue streams, fine. But you're giving a middle finger to your domestic viewers. And if the players don't give a rip until the playoffs, guess what? We don't either. And it sucks because basketball is a great game when the greatest players care. But we see that once in a blue moon. And I don't know, man, the All-Star game, because everyone's like, how do you fix it? I don't think you do. I think it's a sunken cost. I think at this point you lean into we're just celebrating our game and our league over the weekend and nobody gives a rip about it. Because I don't know how you change it.
I like Giannis's idea. USA versus the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the owners would say, yeah, okay, cool, you can play the All-Star weekend in Paris and we'll give them a little extra time off. I mean, international fans would love that. But again, what you're talking about, are you going to continue to sacrifice your domestic product to grow it internationally?
And will the players even care to play? I mean, the biggest problem is the players don't care to play no matter what the format is. Yes, we saw the players play a little bit harder, but do I need 35 minutes of Kevin Hart in between games? Like, are you kidding me? If I was a player, I would have been so pissed that I had to sit for 20 minutes at a time. And look, I love the inside of the NBA guys, but I think I'm good with the mini documentaries that we like. We know they're great. We don't need to honor them at every turn while the players are waiting to play another 15-minute break so we can tell Charles Barkley how funny he is. He knows he's funny. It's fine. So I just don't think there's a way to fix it because I don't think there's a way to get the players to care. One more thing on this because I had forgotten. So Van Lathan, who's kind of a funny podcaster, does a lot of stuff with Simmons, big NBA guy. And he was talking about this morning, and I'd completely forgotten. If you want in a snapshot, anecdotally, to understand just how, I don't know, soft is the word, but how afraid these players are now of looking bad because of social media clips going viral and living forever. There's this old story that LeBron James threw a basketball camp for high school players, and he got into a run, and Jordan Crawford dunked on him in his own camp. And immediately, LeBron stopped the game and told everybody with cell phones who was filming, you kill that video. I don't want that online anywhere. Now, I do think it's available somewhere. I think somebody was able to get like a grainy surveillance snapshot of it. But that right there is and LeBron is the poster child for all of this. And I'm not a LeBron hater. I think it's amazing what he's accomplished. But he did not want a moment going viral of a high school kid dunking on him. And so these players are afraid to be embarrassed. They don't play defense. They don't want to get dunked on. They don't want to get crossed over on. They want to look cool because that's kind of what happened with this new generation of players in an exhibition game. And obviously they don't want to get hurt. And if you're an agent, you're in their ear. We need to get you to your second, your third, your fourth contract. That's how we all get fed. But you know who loses is the consumer. It just sucks watching such a horrible product played by players that don't give a rip.
Did you watch any of the Saturday Night Live 50th?
I watched all of it. I watched every minute of it. I'm like an SNL nerd. I've watched it my entire life. I watch it every Saturday live. I never miss it. And so I watched all of it. I even watched the concert. I watched all of it.
Wow. I don't watch it like that.
Yeah.
I like this current cast.
Sure,
I think they're talented. I think they're good. I got, teary-eyed at the Adam Sandler bit, just like everyone else did.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, hopefully you got a chance to check that out in your long weekend.
Finish Cobra Kai.
Okay.
Are you a Karate Kid guy at all?
I watched the first season of Cobra Kai, and I was like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah, it's horrifically cheesy and not very well written or made, but it does take you back to the Karate Kid trilogy. And
yeah, I'm a sucker for nostalgia, so I watched that, and I was just like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, there's like 4 more seasons? No, I don't need that.
I watched every minute of it.
Okay.
So, yeah, quite a bit of television with some fun people over the weekend and a lot of chilling. Good to be back on air, though.
All right. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks to all of you for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. Let's do it again tomorrow. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.